animal pH. We will stay to in your you thinking about my your itchy or maybe your pet from hair related skin today before we get into Frodo is a wonderful boy. He's years old. He's new a little bit with here. So Frodo came to us through Daniel, whose he sustained a gun to his limb. Fortunately, that role caused injuries that were to the time he went to amputation. As you can see, Frodo is doing really, really well on 3 legs. It's not slowing down a bit. He's very sweet. He loves boys. He is one family friend. Even more to you, Frodo helped to save the life of another family here. So his life was saved by the veterinary team and ambulance team. Save that through blood donation, save the life of the patient. We had another young, very patient here riddled with intestinal disease and disease severely anemic and was saved this week. It was very good. As you can see, saving and he named the way who's on the floor. But it was also bring your see what we have available for you. Maybe you can find for your family. So thank you for putting in. With kids. So last week we mentioned lots of things about allergies. You know, they talk about things that we see in the show, particularly getting in animals who live on who've been outdoors. And so we do see a lot of contagious skin disease. Things that are very main two, but we kind of focus on the 2 major main you might hear here. When you see a dog missing him, you think, what does it mean? Okay, there's 2 demodectic. Some people will also demodectic mange, red mange, Demodectic, you may hear it. This is a mice really live in normal skinny dogs. So very few demodectic mange mice be really on any given. Well, one of the things is they have this immunosuppression where their immune system is poor and those mice begin overgrowth. They live very deep in the so very deep in the hair follicle that they hair. They might love to live there. They love to be on the skin and the oil. It also causes the red. The good news is that it is not contagious. This is the contagious form. So it makes the animals look, sport, healthy, they're losing a lot of hair, contagious. It usually gets with fairly much. It's about 3 months, 3 days longer. Very treatable condition.
Anybody have any questions about demodectic mange or anything else?
So you said most dogs have, a few of them on there. Where do they come from, or what can we do to prevent them from spreading?
Yes, that's a great question. So, dogs will have a few of these mites on their skin, and And really, the puppies actually get them. The theory is that puppies get them from their mom. And even though I mentioned that Demodex is not contagious, they say that when the puppies are kind of nursing and really close to their mom, that they may have gotten it from the mom. But generally, these are in the environment. And so any dog that's been outside could potentially get these mites from the environment. And that is compared to the other type of mange, which is Sarcoptic mange, or called scabies. So you may have heard scabies. Sarcoptic mange or scabies is different from Demodectic mange because it is very contagious once the animals come into contact with each other. So it can be spread through close contact, dog to dog. So it causes the same thing, hair loss, scabby, crusty skin, but the animals that have scabies are typically very, very itchy. I mean, very, very itchy, and they tend to have crusty elbows and crusty ears and crusty abdomen and chest. And so that is common in dogs that have lived outdoors as well. But again, very treatable, and the dogs do very, very well with the medication that we prescribe for both those conditions. So they're very treatable, and we like to treat these kinds of skin diseases because we can really see these animals turn around and become really beautiful with wonderful coats, live long, healthy lives.
And then we had a few seconds of technical issues. So can you just repeat the Demodex prevention again?
Yes, exactly. So, if you want to prevent Demodex, really there's nothing that you can do necessarily to prevent it from spreading. It's sort of just in the environment, and there's nothing that you can really do to prevent it other than, something that can make it flare up are animals that are in heat. So if you have a female dog that's in heat, sometimes if they have Demodex, they can have flare-ups of Demodex during this time. So sometimes spaying them so that they don't go through periods of stress can help to prevent the Demodex from getting worse. But in general, it's not contagious, and so it's not something that you have to keep animals separate from each other from.
And then you did mention scabies was contagious. So how is that transferred? And then how do we prevent it from spreading in the household?
Yeah, so scabies is contagious. So I would say if you have a pet that has scabies, you want to keep them separate from other pets. If you are handling, maybe you're fostering a pet from a shelter that has scabies, what you want to do is when you're handling that pet, as the person, wear gloves, maybe wear a protective smock or, a shirt, something that you can remove and that you don't spread that to any other animals in the house. So keep them separate, keep them isolated for a few weeks until your veterinarian clears the contagious animal to be around other animals. But again, easily treatable, good long-term prognosis.
And how long does it usually take for that to clear?
So scabies will take maybe about 6 weeks to clear. Demodex, as I mentioned before, might take up to 3 months, sometimes a little bit longer depending on the severity. But scabies tends to have a fairly quick response time, and about 6 weeks is a treatment time.
So then we shouldn't be scared of foster scabies or Demodex dogs.
No, please don't be scared of fostering. This is an area that you can make a huge difference in the lives of animals. When dogs come in off the street and they have contagious things like mange, even though they can look, very devastating, they're losing this hair, they're scabby, they're crusty, these animals will look beautiful in no time. A few weeks of tender, loving care in your home as a foster parent. The medication is usually just given orally, or sometimes topically, and so it really is easy to treat, not labor intensive at all. And this is an area in which you guys as animal lovers can really help us to save lives. Get these animals looking wonderful and in their new happy homes.
And then, so somebody on Instagram asked, is it true that black light can detect ringworm?
Oh, great question. So I did bring an example here. So it's slightly different. What you want to do, what you're referring to, is using a special type of lamp called a woods lamp. And so this woods lamp can detect some types of ringworm, but it's not 100% sensitive, meaning it's not going to catch every case of ringworm. But I do have an example here of a woods lamp. And usually what we do is if we have an animal that we suspect of having ringworm, one of the things that we can do to screen for it is to use a woods lamp. So we plug this in, we let it warm up for about 5 minutes or so, and it does look very similar to a black light, work in a very similar way. And then we turn all the lights out and we scan the entire patient's body with the woods lamp. What we're looking for is positive test for ringworm. But the woods lamp only picks this up about 50% of the time, and it's really only good at picking up a particular species of ringworm called Microsporum canis. So it doesn't actually pick up all of the species of ringworm, and it's only good about 50% of the time. So there's certainly more sensitive tests that are a little bit more accurate.
And then for the naked eye, what should we look out for if we think our pet has ringworm?
So ringworm tends to present as a circular patch of hair loss. And in some cases, the hair comes out very easily around that patch of hair loss. So if you were to pull on the hair, it usually comes out very easily. Sometimes there may be a pigmented center. Sometimes the animals are itchy in that area, but not all the time. But generally, a circular patch of hair loss, sometimes the edges of it can be slightly raised, and the center can be slightly hyperpigmented or black or dark in appearance, and the hair around there tends to come out fairly easily. So those might be clues. Ringworm also is very common. A common location is in the toenail beds, particularly in cats and puppies. So if you found a cat or a kitten or puppy off the street, looking right around the toenail beds, that's a common area for ringworm to live. And so you might see areas of hair loss there where the hairs fall out, and the tail is also a very common place.
So unlike the name, it's not from a worm, correct?
That's exactly right. So very good that you mentioned that. So the term ringworm is not actually because there's a worm there, but in some cases, particularly in people when they have ringworm, it is a circular patch of diseased skin, and it's raised. And it can look very similar to a worm under the skin because it's raised and somewhat wrinkly. And so it can look very similar to a circular worm in the skin. But it's not actually a parasite, it's a type of fungus is what it is. And so antifungal medications are used to treat ringworm.
So somebody asked, is there any over-the-counter medicine that we can help to treat ringworm, either in person, for humans or for dogs?
That's a great question, and there are some very effective over-the-counter medications. And whenever you're looking to treat something in your own home, please contact your veterinarian, because you don't want to use the wrong product, or you don't want to self-diagnose your pet, because in the case that you may be wrong, you could do more harm than good. So always contact your veterinarian. But sometimes your veterinarian may say, yes, go to the local store and get a particular antifungal medication that you can put topically on those lesions of ringworm. But yes, common antifungals like clotrimazole and terbinafine and miconazole, those antifungals do tend to be effective against all types of fungus, and it could be prescribed by your veterinarian.
And how long is ringworm contagious for?
Yes, that's a great question too. So generally, ringworm is contagious at least in the first few weeks, so 2 to 3 weeks. And so we still recommend, if you have a pet that has ringworm, that you keep them completely isolated from all other pets, and wear gloves and be careful, because ringworm is one of those things that can be spread to people. So unlike Demodectic, which I said is not contagious, and scabies can be transmitted to people, but usually isn't quite that severe. But ringworm certainly can be transmitted to people, and so you want to be very careful in your handling of pets with ringworm. Wear gloves, keep the pet's area very clean, but they could be contagious for a few weeks. And so I would contact your veterinarian and keep track of that resolving lesion, and hopefully it'll clear up pretty quick for you. It may take, again, about 6 weeks for that ringworm lesion to clear up.
Got it. And then talking about skin, so what is the difference between like tumors or growth or a cyst?
Yes. So we see these all the time too. So one thing that's good for you all to do as pet owners and pet lovers out there is, if you have a pet in your home, I know we're loving on our pets every day, all day. We're petting them, we're holding them, we're hugging them. That's a really good time for you to just use your hand, pet your cat or your dog, and look for little lumps or bumps that are new. So lumps and bumps that pop up that are new, that you haven't ever noticed before, you want to take note of those, because those might be times where you want to contact your family veterinarian and say, hey, I want to get this looked at. I pet my dog all the time, and today when I pet him, there was a little lump on the side. Those might be clues that you want to take them in, because these could be nothing. Sometimes they are just, and what I mean by nothing is something benign that's not going to be life-threatening. A good example of that would be a lipoma. A lipoma is a fatty tumor. It's just a buildup of fat. It happens very often. It particularly happens very often in older animals that are overweight. They will get fat deposits under the skin, sometimes right in the waist area, and they get love handles. Sometimes they'll just get fat deposits there, get some love handles. But lipomas can happen anywhere. They can happen on the chest. They can happen on the limbs. And so if you're feeling a little lump or bump, it could be something very basic and easily treatable like a lipoma, but certainly in some cases, these could be more severe and turn out to be a cancerous or a malignant type of tumor. But the only way you're going to know this is if you see your family veterinarian, they do an initial exam, and they try to do some diagnostic tests. Now, tests could be anything from surgery to remove it and send it out for testing, like a biopsy. Testing could sometimes mean that they just take a needle and they stick a needle in the mass and take a small little sample of it. They can often do that in the clinic and look at those cells under the microscope and try to determine what it is. So there's lots of ways to try to figure out what those lumps and bumps are. But the key is to find them early, get your pet into a family veterinarian and see if they can determine the next steps.
If it's determined to be like a fatty, a tissue or tumor, does it need to be removed, or can it lead to cancerous?
Yeah, great question. So the fatty tumors like lipomas very rarely can become what we call liposarcomas, which are more of a malignant form. But that's extremely rare. These tend to be benign, just fatty deposits. And it depends on where it is, whether or not it needs to be removed. If it's very small and in an area of the body that's not bothering your pet, oftentimes your veterinarian may opt to leave it if it's not causing any harm. However, sometimes they can grow and they can get really big and they can start to affect the day-to-day life of your pet. For example, years ago when I was in practice, I had a patient, beautiful Kaysen, and this dog had a really big lipoma that was in the groin area, that was right in the thigh area. And it was causing him to have to sort of walk around the tumor. It was affecting his gait. And so I was able to do surgery and remove that large lipoma, made his quality of life much better. And so if it's affecting him on a day-to-day basis, it may be something that your veterinarian recommends removing.
So somebody else asked about, scabies or mange. What are some safe shampoos, or what type of grooming do these type of skin require?
Yes, that's a great question too, because I mentioned how Demodects like to live deep in the hair follicles. And one of the things that we tend to do to help get those mites out is use a follicular flushing type shampoo. So one of the things that we can do to help is not only give oral or topical medications, but to give them baths regularly, depending on what your veterinarian recommends. But follicular flushing type shampoos, like those that have benzoyl peroxide in them, kind of like a Acne type shampoo, they make those for dogs. And so we can give them a bath. It helps to flush the mites up to the surface of the skin and make them more susceptible to being killed by the medication. Now, scabies tends to live more superficial on top of the skin. And so we don't necessarily need a follicular flushing type shampoo, but something to help calm the skin down. Sometimes we'll use oatmeal-based shampoos, or if they have secondary bacterial infections, sometimes we'll use an antibacterial type shampoo. So there's lots of options here. Some of them are just basic oatmeal-based type shampoos, and sometimes they're medicated to try to help get those mites out of the skin.
So Marla says her dog breaks out in hives when let him out in the backyard. What should she do?
Wow, if your dog is breaking out in hives when they're going outside, my first suspicion is that there's probably some sort of allergy, obviously, to grass, trees, mold, something that's outside. And so to figure out what that is, you're going to have to see your veterinarian because they're going to have to do some testing. And there's lots of ways to test to see what the specific allergen is that your dog is allergic to. So they could do a skin test, very similar to what people have, where they inject different allergens into your pet skin to see what's the most reactive. There are blood tests that they can do, but you're going to have some testing to try to figure out what your pet's allergic to. Then it's a matter of how do we prevent that. It could mean that when your pet goes outside, you need to protect them in some way. Do you need to put a t-shirt on them, prevent them from walking in the grass a lot or rolling in the grass? Does that mean that you need to have some medication on hand to administer to kind of calm those hives down? Antihistamines, we can use very safely, usually very safely in dogs. And so antihistamines can help with those hives. But then if it becomes serious, then your veterinarian may opt to have something like a steroid on hand, so that if your pet breaks out in hives and becomes extremely itchy, that maybe antihistamines are not enough. They may want to add or do like a steroid. But yeah, that can be really uncomfortable for them. So preventing it might be, good. Limiting their contact with the grass outside, walking them in areas away from whatever seems to be kind of triggering that.
And somebody was wondering, for cats, is it typical for them to have acne or like chin acne? Is that a thing?
Yes, there is a such thing called chin acne in cats. And so the interesting thing is sometimes you might see a cat and they lift their chin up, and right here at the underside of their chin, what we call the ventral aspect of the chin, it may be black. And it may look like there's a lot of dirt there. So it can look like black dirt built up there, or it could look like black bumps there. And so oftentimes people will confuse it with flea dirt. So if you want to know what it looks like, think about what flea dirt looks like in the coat, and then I think Frodo's having a little snort there. And so it looks like a little flea dirt on the chin. And so it gets confused with fleas. But really, that's the location of chin acne. And what those are like blackheads. They're like what we call comedones. They're like blackheads. It's areas where oil from the skin is sort of built up in the follicles, and it forms little blackheads there. And this can be treated as well. Sometimes antibacterials, sometimes little acne wipes, like benzoyl peroxide, to again flush all that oil and debris out. That can help. But again, see your veterinarian to make sure that that's what it is, that it's feline chin acne, and then they can prescribe the appropriate medication. Sometimes it's topical, sometimes it's a little white, sometimes it's oral.
So how do we know if it's time to visit the vet or if the skin issue will resolve on their own?
It's hard to know. When you're just looking at your pet at home, it's hard to know. And even I can't tell you right away, whether or not this is going to be something that would go away on its own, or whether or not you need to see your veterinarian. And so I would just opt for seeing the veterinarian. In the best case scenario, you take your pet to the veterinarian. They say, this is very minor. Maybe it doesn't need any treatment at all. Maybe it will resolve on its own. And at least you can have that peace of mind, and that your pet is not, in any discomfort. And so that can be a really good thing to do for peace of mind and for your pet's health. Because if you don't do that and you decide to kind of wait and watch and see, it could get worse. And when these medical conditions get worse, sometimes what that means, it becomes more expensive to treat, more difficult to treat, and could sometimes reach the point of, beyond resolution, particularly if it's something that winds up being cancerous. So if you find something suspicious, a lump or a bump, take them in sooner rather than later, so that we can make sure that we keep your pets in wonderful health and help them to the long, healthy lives.
And can you introduce Frodo to us one more time? Because there was some sound difficulty.
Absolutely. If you did not hear us at the beginning of the show, or if the technology was giving us a little bit of trouble, please let me introduce to you our wonderful pet of the week, who is Frodo here. And I was telling the audience at the beginning of the show that Frodo came to us through our ambulance service. Our ambulance service picked up Frodo, and he unfortunately suffered a gunshot to his rear left leg. And so the damage there was irreparable, and Frodo underwent an amputation. But as you can see, he's doing really, really well on 3 legs. He's still fast as all get out, so he can chase balls. He can go on walks with you. He's doing great. It doesn't seem to affect him at all. But Frodo, his life was saved by our veterinarian team, and then Frodo returned that favor by saving another life. Frodo was a blood donor for another patient that we had here. Frodo donated blood in order to save a puppy that we had that was suffering from severe anemia. So Frodo deserves a wonderful, long, healthy life, and we're happy to help him find that. So please bring your family and friends. Come on down to the Houston SPCA, to our adoption center. Visit with Frodo. He's going to make a wonderful, wonderful pet, and see all the other dogs and cats and puppies and kittens that we have available. So consider going to the HoustonSPCA.org and trying to figure out ways that you can become a part of our extended family, become a foster parent, and help animals that just need a little more TLC, become a volunteer, or if you're looking for employment, there's lots of positions that might fit you. So come on down, visit with us. We'll be happy to see you. Otherwise, I'll see you next Friday here on the Pet Podcast. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Dr. Roberta Westbrook, and we'll see you next week.